time is, oh, it's 6 o'clock still. Everybody please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I think we'll have Roxy begin the next meeting.
I think we will have our student representative and ROTC next meeting. I think there was potentially a football conflict tonight, and our new student rep is a football player. So
Okay.
Isaac Parlett will be here next meeting as well.
So roll call, please, Karen?
Mr. Lane?
Yes, or here, whichever one it is.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Here.
Mrs. Cope?
Here.
Mrs. Dalton?
Here.
Mr. Gliotti?
Here. Item number 4, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions on the contents? Lots of personnel pages again. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 5, communications reports. A is hearing of the public. We do have one tonight, if you want to go up to the podium. State your name and address, and just a reminder, the presentation limited to 5 minutes per person. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually, and the presiding officer may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, repetitive, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Go ahead. You're up.
All right, here we are again. My name is Juan Gonzalez, 6 Oakwood Avenue, Lebanon, Ohio, 45036. This is part 2 of Brian Kendall, his mental abuse and bullying, and the cover-up by the administration, principal, vice principal, Keith Pantling, athletic director, Isaac Seaver. So here we are again. So I was here a month ago. I thought maybe if I bled my heart out, somebody would take what I had to say seriously, and it doesn't seem that it was taken seriously at all, in my opinion. About a week after I was here last, I got a phone call from a parent that is on Brian Kendall's travel ball team, and as they're all drinking and doing what they're doing down there, Brian Kendall tells the group, and the person that told me, that he was told by a board member that he was being investigated for this abuse, but not to worry about it. That's the phone call that I got a week after I was here last. I've been waiting since then to get back here. It seems like the more I talk about this, the more I'm uncovering. It's layers. This is layers right here. So when I get here, a conversation was initiated by Isaac Seaver, excuse me. He told me that I wasn't allowed to speak today. Nobody was going to hear me. And I told him, actually, it's my right. He was first going to try to block me from standing up here and keep telling the truth to you folks. He also let me know that an investigation into the facts that I've presented about Brian Kendall, that he did an investigation. As one of the known participants that I've publicly made aware of the cover-up and the corruption here at Lebanon City Schools, he told me he led the investigation, and he handed me this, coincidentally, the same day I'm here. I read one line and I put it down because I don't have my glasses first off, so I had to kind of look at it and make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. But in his investigation, he tells where he talked to the entire coaching staff, and there was never any note of any kind of bullying or mistreatment. going on. Wow. That's pretty funny that the one person I'm accusing of this is leading the investigation, and these allegations, these facts are coming back unfounded by one of the participants in this. I think that's a conflict of interest, that he's leading this investigation, who I described as his cover-up gang, and I've described who they are. Of course, what is he going to find here? Is he going to rule against Brian Kendall? Is he? When he's one of the guys. Listen, there's more and more and more stories. I have people, I'm gaining traction. Why weren't any of these people ever contacted? Why wasn't I ever contacted? As an investigator, why wasn't I contacted? Where should we look? Who are the people this affected? Not one phone call in his investigation. Not one phone call to any of the people that I already let him know about. Not one phone call. Is this really an investigation? It's more of a cover-up to me. So here we are now, a month later, still nothing's been done. And that's fine. If the people that live in my community aren't going to help me protect my community, then it's time to move from this point and keep pushing and keep talking until somebody that cares finally hears what I have to say and cares about these young female athletes specifically, and isn't going to let a friendship or I've worked with this guy for years or anything else but the fact that you're doing wrong and you need to be held accountable. Brian Kendall needs to be held accountable. Isaac Seaver needs to be held accountable. The rest of the administration, they need to be held accountable. Isaac, you are failing our community right now. You are failing us, and you are putting our kids at risk.
Could you please just...
I understand.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it that you give me the time up here to talk, but this is important, Mr. McCutcheon. And if it was your daughter, I'm sure you would feel the same. If you didn't know when you woke up the next day if your daughter would be alive or dead, and I told this same story to somebody else, and they told me back, I thought the exact same thing. They knew exactly how I felt when I told them I didn't know if my daughter was going to be alive in her bedroom. They felt exactly the same way as me. You could shake your head, Mr. McCutcheon.
I didn't shake
No, I know. I'm not.
I didn't shake my head.
Well, I understand.
You can apologize for that now. I didn't shake my
I'm
head.
not sure why you shook your head. But
I didn't shake my
Remember the
head.
Rule, you're not supposed to engage.
Okay.
I did not shake my head.
All right.
You got about 20 seconds if you want to wrap up.
Listen,
so.
from here on, I'm going to the media with this. This needs attention. If we're not going to get it from here, then somebody will find interest in this. In the day and age where we have policy to protect these kids against bullying and against mental abuse, especially from a teacher, somebody will listen to this. I promise you. And that's all I have to say.
I appreciate you coming in again. So, thank you.
I appreciate your time, folks. Thank you.
Item,
Can I make one statement?
you may.
Just to clear the record, I was out there when he was speaking, and Isaac did not tell him that he would not be heard or that he was not allowed to speak to the board this evening. I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
B, Superintendent's Report.
I'm good. I'm good to continue. Okay? I'm good if you guys are good. If we need to take a recess, we can do that, but I'm fine if you guys are fine.
I'm okay.
Okay. We're going to talk about the great things happening at Lebanon City Schools for a few moments. Okay? We welcomed back into our buildings today Barry, the junior high and high school students. And Joe, just to give kind of an update on, we're in the acclimation period here of kids kind of trickling back in over the next few days. And so, I think just always good to, this time of year to think about, we have over 5,500 students. Our enrollment's slightly up this year until we can get all of the ins and outs in the next couple of weeks because we're still receiving some transfer request forms from other places. My goal would be to send out next month and talk about our enrollment trends that we've seen over the last couple of years. Over 750 staff members, and we're off to a really good start. I've been in all the buildings over the last several days, and it's been very positive. So we'll continue to share that. I hope that people have seen we've been very active in trying to communicate some of the updates and things coming back to school, and that's going to continue for us. The next thing on the list was nutrition standards policy. So every year, I'm supposed to tell the Board of Education that we are following the National School Lunch Program nutrition standards. There's nothing for you to really see besides a letter that was written that says that we're following the National School Lunch Program, but we need to make sure it's documented on a Board of Education meeting that we have a policy and we're following the policy. And so that's why it's on the agenda tonight.
And some good news, bad news coming up on the agenda later with the extra food being sold and bought at the schools, right?
What's
And the
that?
then and now statements in there. There was a
Oh.
comment about the
Yeah, so one of the things
Pre-sales.
I would say is that our new food service director started partway through the year last year. Megan, Mrs. Grippa has been doing a great job in her staff with Amy Euchre and Pat Boer. The high school on Wednesday, the staff are going to get a first taste and a sampling of, there's new pizza ovens that are being installed there. And so we're doing pizza from scratch. Like they bring in the dough, they're making the pizza on site instead of I loved Tony's Pizza when I was a kid, the old rectangle. So you guys remember that? Fiestada, right? The Fiestada pizza and the hexagon was my favorite, but they're working on doing that. We'll have some new options coming in terms of some smoothie bars and things at the high school. Today at the high school, over 500 kids in our first lunch. The time they called the first table, within 10 minutes, they were all through the line. It's much faster this year and in terms of getting kids through the line. So we're providing quality meals. There will be some changes this year, and we're following the National School Lunch Program. So that's my second point. The third point, I want to put a graphic on the screen so anybody at home could possibly see this if they're watching. We shared this with our staff on opening day. We've put it out this week in a newsletter to our families, and we're going to continue to share it with our community. We've been asked a lot, why did we shift the 15-minute starting and ending time for school? The high school, Barry, Donovan, and Bowman all shifted 15 minutes. And that was the result of a transportation study based off of some recommendations. There were some other changes along the way as well. So, for example, in some of the larger neighborhoods, instead of picking up on every street corner throughout the neighborhood, which takes time for high school students only, we're having them walk a little bit further to some common spots in the middle of the neighborhood and getting them. That's helping with high school routing. But overall, we were able to reduce our staffing hours by 20 hours per day. 20 hours per day, 187 days of work for those folks. Considerable amount of staff hours reduced while not reducing any staff members. Actually, what's happened is through attrition, we're about 4 drivers less at this point in time than we were last year because of retirements and resignations. And our drivers that we've maintained and not had to lay anybody off or change anything, a lot of them actually have more hours for themselves at this point in time. The second thing is minus 6 routes or buses. So last year we had 67 routes going to a neighborhood, going to the country, whatever it may be, 67. We were able to get that down to 61. And that 61 actually includes, it would have been a greater reduction, but the 61 actually includes the fact that we were able to pick up 3 private contract routes. So it would have been a reduction of 9 routes. But what we were able to do was maintaining the staff that we had, say, we're going to take kids now. We have several schools where we serve kids off-site, out of district. And previously, we were paying a private contractor. They would come in a van, they'd come in a car, whatever it may have been, to transport students to school in private transportation. we were to reduce 3 of those, put them on either our school buses or a school van driven by our drivers, which we think is, a better thing as well. And those 3 major changes accounted for, I wish that I would have been able to figure out, when I was creating this picture and working with Wendy, the little squiggly line for my math days of approximate. And here's why. That $200,000, I believe, is a conservative estimate. The actual numbers we ran were about $218,000. It will fluctuate based off of what drivers now have in terms of availability, or they're going to get some more hours, which means they may qualify for a different level of insurance benefits. We won't know the overall change until we know in payroll how many drivers were not taking benefits last year that now do, or how many drivers moved from a lower percentage of benefit rates to a higher percentage. And so there's the challenge there a little bit. We thought like this was conservative. The other thing that we did not include in this, but we've talked about, is that this does not include in this savings the ongoing cost that would happen in the future in terms of 6 fewer buses means we have to replace 6 fewer buses at $100,000 or so each, right? That's a $600,000 savings over the next several years because we're taking our oldest buses off the route. The newer buses have better gas mileage, they have lower maintenance cost. And so there are some additional savings that are really hard for us to kind of figure out up front. And it's not a real savings because we didn't buy buses, right? So those are some things. I want to make sure that people have as much information as possible. We made this shift based off of research, based off of data. We knew this was coming as a possibility. I think it turns out a little better at this level than we even thought originally. And we didn't have to make, monumental changes to transportation. So does anybody have any questions about that or comments about the transportation savings and changes for the year?
Thanks for breaking that down to just show everyone what we're doing to try to increase efficiencies.
Yeah. We tried to find an easy way, like what are the 3 or 4 bullet points? Instead of bullet points, put them on a school bus, draw your attention to it. Hopefully, it's something that can speak to what we're trying to do as a district. So
Wasn't there conversation, it's been several months though, but if we got our efficiency rating to a certain point, there was more state grant?
Yeah, so, okay, if you want to talk about it, me too. In addition to that, we did not include in the $200,000 savings because we don't know yet. The assumption is based off, we were really close before. So the reason we were not getting the efficiency bonus out of the Ohio Department of Education for transportation was we had not enough 3-tiered routes. So a 3-tiered route, for those that don't speak logistics and busing, break it down, they go pick up high school kids, they drop them off, they go pick up Berry kids, that's the 2nd tier, they drop them off, they go pick up Bowman kids, they drop them off. Last year we had 3 routes that had the ability to pick up 3 different buildings. So what we were having was drivers that sometimes had to sit in between routes because the layover time was not enough for them to go pick up kids, but it was too long for them to just turn around and go back out. We went from 3 3-tiered routes to from 4 to 14.
Oh,
So we have 14 3-tiered routes now.
14 out of 61.
14 out of 60. Well, it'll be 14 out of 58 because 3 of those are special transportations that there are probably 2 tiers. So 14 of them are 3-tiered routes, which we had to get more time in between buildings to accomplish that. So our calculations are such, and the route study told us, if we make this change, we will qualify for the efficiency bonus. We didn't include that into the annual $200,000 number there. That's an additional amount that we expect to receive in funding that wasn't accounted for. Fuel
Fingers
cost.
crossed, we'll get there.
And that comes through the state foundation payments. So once we do our, what we call the T2 reports, that generates all that data back to the state. They have to analyze that. So it'll take a little bit of time to
What
work
is
its way
the
back.
timeline on, when is the,
We typically do the T2 in October.
okay.
I'm not sure how long it takes for the state to analyze and then get us that change.
So-
But hopefully by the end of the school year is my guess.
Has it helped with the traffic out here? from the high
Today
school
was
and
the
junior
first,
high?
today was the first day that I came in and drove my son to school this morning, during the peak time, and it wasn't as bad. My kids made it to the high school this morning better than they've been able to make it in the past as well. So I don't know, anecdotally, for me, it was better this morning, but I don't know
It's
what.
really the Miller Road Drake intersection that we're hoping, right?
Because it's
bad.
Then that corner here too,
Yeah.
that's
Lots of left
dangerous.
turns.
Yeah, that's good.
And so the goal is to get them apart. We think it will benefit that as well. But we needed the time to be able to flip those routes around more quickly. I mean, I want to say publicly, the transportation staff, this was a complete rerouting of our entire district. So there's not a single route that was the same as it was, or structure, for the most part of what it was last year. Lori and Kim and their staff down there, Mary McGowan, they did a great job of routing and doing logistics. And we have sent out several messages in the last couple of days reminding people, if you did not sign up for transportation, you're not going to get picked up, but do it now. We'll get you added to the list. They've been working a lot of hours to try to get kids routed, but that's we're in a good place to start the year. And the other thing I guess I would say, so what our plan is to continue to do is to share this information. So when we have the T2 reports and we get that information, we'll come back and share what that looks like. We can compare from one year to the next our transportation funding from the state. We can compare fuel consumption from one year to the next and the amount of gallons, the cost. There's no comparison when you think about the amount of fuel now, the cost of fuel now to what it was even a year ago. And so we're going to try to figure out what are a few metrics that we can actually tell you and show you. So the T2 is really the best report for us because it will give us the overall maintenance cost for the year, not just the sampling that we took before. Because when we made the shift 2 years ago and we bought new buses, we talked about the potential savings. 1 year later, we told you what those savings were. The further out we get from that initial projection, right, our employee costs have gone up, insurance costs have gone up, fuel costs has gone up. We're trying to figure out how can I compare gallons of fuel, man hours, things like that, because that's the best comparison we have over the long haul. And we think we can get that information, in terms of our reports from our end in October. And so we're committed to coming back and sharing what this does, but also looking back at the annual savings as a result of updating buses to maintenance cost and what that looks like, because we're heading into our third year of that cycle this year, correct, Mrs. Irvin? And I think that lease payment was a 3-year, so this is the final year of that, so.
So my last question on that additional funding, is that all or nothing or prorated?
On the funding, it's all or nothing.
All or nothing.
If you get the efficiency bonus, then you get it.
Okay, thank you.
And like I said, we were very, very close before. And so from the person who helped write the formula for state funding, it was the one that helped us with our assessment. The recommendation is you do this at this first step, and what they recommended, then you'll qualify for the bonus. We expect additional revenue. So
Perfect.
that's it for me.
Okay. C is board committee reports. We'll start with student achievement liaison, Mrs. Dalton.
Okay,
I added that picture to the end of your slideshow so I could have it, so.
okay, that works.
Backwards.
Okay, this is a bit of a repeat from the summer, but in case there weren't many people watching, I just wanted to highlight our football team and the efforts that they did over the summer in building 24,000 meals for people in Africa. And this was a community, like a philanthropy event that Coach Fowler planned with Mason, so. nice thing. This is a picture of what our band did over the summer in the Independence Day Parade. And then the next one, they're again doing other performances this summer, very active with that.
So just those two pictures on the right-hand side there, I looked at this like, what are those? We have students a lot that will participate in summer drum and bugle corps. Sometimes we have the ability to host them here, and so we've had several groups that come and practice, stay in the DPC, use the gym for sleeping overnight, and things like that. There's a couple of our students there that, in Mr. Sershin's update back, they were really heavily involved in things locally this summer, but also some of these students traveled and were participating.
Yeah, we have a neighbor who, he's gone for like weeks on end
Yeah,
performing
it's
with one of those.
it's weeks, and they do like a circuit around the country for competitions. It's quite
I think that
fascinating.
was like an opening for Kroger or something like that.
Yeah, the one on the left there, yeah.
Yeah, so Lebanon was represented. And then here is our French class, students that went over for a summer trip to France with the French class. And so I'm sure that was a good trip for them abroad. And these were the open houses that occurred at Bowman and the high school, the junior high school, to get them all signed up and introduced to a new school.
So one thing
Can't tell
I
if the top right is getting directions or taking an oath of some kind.
directions. You're going to go down this direction. One of the things I would say is a lot of some of the junior high, for example, they did their school pictures prior to school this year. That's before our teacher contract time started, and so we did have a lot of staff members that were in and out for a few days. But it's really about kids coming in and seeing the building. And I said this on opening day. Our custodians did an excellent job this summer preparing the buildings, getting things ready. And so this was kind of an exciting moment. I liked the signing day they did for kindergarten students up there at the
Yeah.
top on Welcome to Kindergarten. So it was great.
Yes, and then one of the major initiatives that we're taking this year, based on the survey results that we took place at the end of last year and into the summer, was our mission to be reflective, respectful, and responsible. And we've kind of, played that out. Mr. Sievers can talk more to this, more detail than I can, but I'll just give it an overview. The buildings have looked like they've really taken this mission and tried to drill it down into effective ways to work with the students to demonstrate lessons and examples and expectations of behaviors. They're consistent across all buildings. They're implemented in all the same way for the specific grade levels. And there are just lots of activities, and then just putting students in different scenarios. This is how you act in the bathroom and the hallways and things that we may take for granted, but not everyone has the same kind of baseline to start from. So I think this will really help with behavior and just how we have students interacting.
You did a really good job of explaining why this is important. I just want to say to that, we have hung these on our walls, outside our bathrooms, in our cafeterias before kids go out to recess. This is the overarching, every building has the same thing, trying to be in kid-friendly language as much as possible, right? If we don't know what the word reflective means, then we're gonna try to put in kid-friendly language to say, like, I'm honest with myself and others. I can reflect on what's happening in the situation. So I think it's trying to be something that we integrate in everything that we do. And I'm really happy that that's been received. I had a parent, they're a parent of our district. They were applying for a job. We were interviewing them this past spring. And I made a comment to them about, like, our district's mission is to build a reflective, responsible, and respectful community. And she said, "Oh, I know, it's everywhere," right? And I was like, "Yes, it is. I'm glad you noticed." And she's like, "And I'm glad it's everywhere because it's a constant reminder." So
It's just like a company. I think it's like a mission, and we're all kind of working together to achieve that. And we know what our common goals are and what we're hoping to gain from our students. And then Barry, I thought it was kind of unique what they're doing. They're having a signing day, after they go through all of these lessons and activities and kind of discussions, then, along with the Constitution Day on September 17th, they're going to kind of sign their own constitution that they're going to work to achieve these goals.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
so,
So one of the things, just in this slide here, we're not going to click on the links, but I don't know if the links are even active, but I do want to say that our expectation is that we're teaching these as well. So some buildings are choosing to make kid-created videos where they're talking to their peers about what this may look like. Some of them are lessons that they're teaching in a classroom, like, hey, we're going to talk about responsibility. What does it look like to stand up and own it? Right? And we're going to have this lesson, we're going to do these things. So it's trying to be consistent, but also teaching, because like Mrs. Dalton said, not everybody understands, it seems like common sense, right? That we're going to be respectful in the bathroom or on the recess, whatever. But we also need to be consistently reinforcing it and teaching it. So thank you for that.
sure.
B is the CAC committee. Mr. Gliotti, I've been told that Mr. McCutcheon is handing this off to you today.
Sure. The Community Audit Advisory Committee met at 5 o'clock today. At the meeting, Mr. Faulkner, Mr. Haynes, Mr. McCutcheon, Mrs. Irvin, Mrs. Flagg, and myself were present. Today, we took a deep dive into the cash summary report for the district. If you've never seen it, it's about a 6-page document, and I was shocked. There's probably, I didn't ask Mrs. Irvin, probably about 200 accounts approximately on this document. We typically, as a district and as a community, pay attention to one of the accounts, which is the general fund. And we should. It has the most revenue, the most dollars in it. But many of these other funds are important and relevant. And we took a deep dive down this report and looked at them. They're broken down into special cost centers. So you could sort of consider them as almost individual checking accounts that can roll together in different ways. And later in our meeting, I understand we're going to talk about some of those accounts that are not active that will require a board vote to disable or move into another fund. And some of this is governed by the Ohio Revised Code. Mrs. Irvin also taught us something I thought particularly valuable. She believes in transparency, and she showed us how you can look at this report quickly and monitor the health of your district's finances with respect to how the treasurer's office is managing the individual accounts. And I thought that was I've never looked at it that way, but that was very, very helpful. And I'll now be able to use that as a tool to help as well. We moved from that to talking about how unbelievably complicated really our budget is when you look at 200 special cost centers. And how do you then in our strategic plan work towards transparency to the public, because it truly is difficult to move one. If you're over budget in one fund, you can't, for example, move funds from another to equal that out. It doesn't work that way. Breaking it down, though, there are a lot of very positive things that are happening with our district with respect to finances, and the school bus savings is just one of those. But one of the missions of the Audit Advisory Committee, along with the Treasurer's Office, is to continue to point out wins. There are a lot of them, a lot of good things to share to the public. And how do we take something so complicated, but break it down so the public can see the positives that are happening? So we really need to share the good news. There's a lot of good news happening, a lot of people focusing on it. So that's where our meeting ended. I don't have pretty slides because our meeting was an hour ago, but that's in general our report. Any questions?
If you have any, please direct them to Mr. McCutcheon.
That's right. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gliotti. C, Legislative Liaison, Mrs. Cope.
Due to some internet issues I've had today, I have no legislative update.
And D, Warren County Career Center, we met last Thursday. A couple of things we did. It is evaluation season, so we took care of a couple of those up there. And last week, the Career Center welcomed back their largest student population, I think, ever. So there were some program shifts as things become more popular and things have, maybe not as desired anymore, but they're doing a great job up there. Appreciate the work they're doing. Again, Lebanon, most represented school district at the center. So, item number 6, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the July 15th meeting.
So moved.
Second?
I'll let you pick whoever that was. Let's see, any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 7, I need a motion to approve items under financial, items A through L.
So moved?
Second.
Mrs. Irvin?
Okay, this should be fairly short this time. So this is our current forecast as of May. Now, Mr. Severs just spent a long time talking, not a long time, but a short amount of time talking about some significant savings that are not in here at all. This was not something we knew back in May when we were doing the initial studies, the research. So understand that this will shift, and I tell you this every single time, but pretty much the month after you do the forecast, it's completely out of date and needs dramatic increases, decreases in multiple areas. So understand that's where we're at. The next update will be coming in November. But until then, this is what we have. So the green box is where we're at currently. We are in fiscal year 25, and we talked a little bit last month, and the next slide will show you the where we landed versus where we had projected for this May forecast. So if you want to move to the next screen, we had talked we were going to have about a 2.8 deficit last year leading into this year, which was going to be about 1.9. We actually ended the year with a 2.38. And then we're talking about savings this year. We also talked about there's an advance going on, so it's not actually that big of a deficit anyways. So once we start building all these numbers, build in the changes, build in, as you know, personnel is our biggest cost. As we build in those changes, all the staffing shifts that have occurred, we'll get a better estimate of where we're at. We're only 1 month in. It's really hard for me to give you good estimates 1 month into a 12-month process, but here we go. 1 month in, we are right where we thought we were going to be. Yay, great. So that's our gray line. It's a straight line because we've only got 1 month of data, right? It didn't shift. It is just a single shift. But right now, if you'll look at the operating days cash, we're currently at 122. We anticipate that at the end of this year, we will drop below that targeted 120. Now, if you remember last year, for pretty much the entire year, we were anticipating 120 to 130 about the entire year, and we landed right there, around 120. So first few months are rocky. We don't really know. It's going to be, anything could happen this year, right? We could get any number of students that drive costs up or down. The significant changes with transportation could drive numbers. But right now, we're looking that we will drop a little bit less than our target. My goal we've talked about before at CAC committee will be to evaluate that cash balance policy and see exactly where we want to land. How much cash do we want to keep? Is 120 the right target? Or should we be thinking elsewise, otherwise? And if it is the right target, what do we need to do this year to make sure that we're closer to 120 than not?
And at the end of the year, you're at 108 days, but that's not the low point of the year
Correct.
either. So do you have an estimate on that low point?
I do not. So at that point, we're probably, just knowing how this year landed, we're probably going to need to move some of our investment money back into our regular checking account just to cover those costs until the property tax comes back in. If that's the case, that would be reflected here, but. Okay, so 1 month out of the year, we should be around 8%, and you'll see this every time we have the property tax income coming in, we are slightly heavy. We ask, the board approves for me to ask the county to advance us that money. So typically, the county, if you don't ask for the advance, they will pay twice a year, just like we pay twice a year. We ask for it in advances, so they pay multiple months. As they're getting the revenue, they pay us more frequently. That helps us carry through for some of those lower months of balances. We get that money, we can pay, keep our payroll going, no problems. So we're about looking at 15% right now, very close to what we had targeted, close to our estimate. Expenses were only about 7%, and again, if you remember last year, we were almost always 1 to 2% under that target, which is where we want to be. The variance looks really big right now because our expenses, as you might imagine, don't really occur much in July. They start happening when school starts happening, right? So we start to get our kids, we know how much special education costs, we know how much transportation costs. Those things kind of taper out. Those variances will shift appropriately. But right now, we're looking good, about 7% of the 8% that we would have, if all things were equal every single month, which they're not, we're looking pretty good there. Any questions?
So moving on to C, activity purpose and budget statements.
So these straggle in, these are any student-driven or student-managed or district-managed for students. These are those activity groups that collect and pay out money.
And I believe in the past when we talked about these, they had to show that they would have a positive or at least a zero balance at
Yes.
the end.
Yes.
D is to close inactive funds.
Okay, so you'll see a few different funds here. Every year as part of the process for reviewing how we did throughout the year, I look to see if there are any funds that we haven't used over a course of several years. This first one, Camp Berry, is the largest dollar amount. I said it was about $20,000. I was wrong. It was about $11,000. But before COVID, we were sending our Berry students to Camp Joy. During COVID, that stopped. That process has not started back yet. And so we'd like to go ahead and close the fund. We're going to, in the next item there, you'll see we're moving the funds from Camp Joy Berry to the Berry Building Fund. So it's the same type of fund. We can use it for similar purposes. If they do decide to do a short one-day thing at Camp Joy, I don't even know if that's possible, they would just do it through their building fund. The next couple are old grants that we've received. All of our 019 funds are grant funds. These, we got a certain dollar amount. We spent what we needed to achieve the grant, and then there's the small dollar amount remaining. So $12 or $5. The largest one here is 107, but I believe the program was much, much more. It was thousands. And so basically, I have to let it sit here, or I have to say, buildings, you have to figure out the one thing that's going to cost about that much money to use it. Rather than do that, I'm going to have the board declare these as we no longer need that money for the intended purposes, and we'll shift that back to the general fund so we can use it. It's going to go for similar purposes anyways, but this allows us to clean up some of the accounting so we don't have so many funds to track.
Okay, and then E is the transferring of those closed accounts to the other ones like you just mentioned.
Yes.
F is advanced repayment.
So this, you're going to start to see more often as we get donations for the Legacy Project. We've had both the general fund and the capital improvement regular fund advance money for some of the expenses in that fund that we knew were going to come in as donations. We're slowly repaying that as we collect those donations.
G is a list of amended appropriations. H, amended certificate of estimate resources. I is a list of donations, and we do, as always, appreciate every one of those. I think there are actually 9 of them this time. It's a longer list. J is approve the revised city school substitute temporary position salary schedule. Any comments on that one?
Sorry, J.
J.
We approve these annually, and then there are some positions this year where because of increases in like the aid category or the bus driver category, whatever it was, we did some adjustments to the substitutes to get it more in line with what's happening around us. So they weren't significant changes there, but it's kind of in alignment with the new contracted amounts that we have for our employees.
Okay. K is approve the agreement between Lebanon City Schools and G and J Pepsi Cola bottlers for the provision of beverage services effective August 7th, 2024. And then L is a list of then and nows.
So you mentioned the food service then and now, that was last year. Great news, kids bought more food. Bad news, we weren't prepared. So, there you go.
The other thing, just to point out, when you show up to an event or in the cafeteria or in vending machines in hallways around the district, you're going to notice that we now are using Pepsi products instead of Coke. Some of the administrators are very upset by that because they have a Coke Zero addiction. I think yours is just regular Coke over there, right, Mrs. Irvin?
cherry.
Okay. But the reality is we're required by law and by the National School Lunch Program to bid out everything that we sell in contracts that we have. So for our cafeterias, they're selling bottles of water, they're selling juices, they're selling, drinks that meet the school lunch program, and we have to get multiple bids. When we did that this year, Pepsi was considerably more favorable to the school district. Their product cost was slightly cheaper. They're providing student scholarships. They're providing larger amounts of money going back in terms of, rebates and things like that. So it was very profitable for us to make the switch.
They're also allowing vending machines, so you'll start to see more vending machines and the use. Pretty excited about how these can be used. There are some that you can put food in them, like lunches in them. So just as we explore these, it's going to be a revenue generator. I talked at the CAC meeting a little bit about food service is a business. That fund has to support its expenses. And so this is a way that we can generate a little bit more revenue so they can start replacing their own things. So the pizza ovens, they can pay for it instead of general fund or the general taxpayer dollars, which is in the capital improvement fund, making those shifts. They will be able to. So we're pretty excited about it.
The second thing, and just to clarify, so for example, they're going to put a Pepsi vending machine that's full service. Pepsi will come and stock it. Pepsi will take care of it at the stadium outside of the concession stands area. Because the concession stands are only open for official events, but people walk out there. People are there for other things. Sometimes there's an outside group that comes in and uses the facility. That revenue will go back into school district in terms of rebates and, profit and things like that as well. So where can we be strategic about places? We host a lot of weekend activities that are not staffed by, rentals, things like that. It's potentially another revenue source. If it's in the athletic department area, that could go towards the athletic budget. If it's in the food service department area and things that are served during lunch times or during breakfast time, then that's going to go to the food service budget. It has the ability Pepsi has the ability to break it down by revenue streams as well. So we think it'll be a good, a good situation for us as well. So I apologize to all the Coke lovers. We are required to get bids and Pepsi won. So
Will we be able to see the financial difference of this decision next year?
can
we
make
should
that
be
happen.
able to see that as we go throughout the year, yes. That's something that we will see the impact immediately in food service areas and things like that as well, so.
Any other questions on items A through L? Roll call, please.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item 8, other educational. I need a motion to approve item A, which is to approve the Lebanon City School bus stops for the 24-25 school year.
So moved.
Second.
I will tell you, I scrolled forever. I didn't read them all, but it was amazing how many pages.
It's a 4-inch binder in my office, in case anybody needs to know, but, yes, we transport, I think the number that I heard was approximately like 3,200 students a day, somewhere in that ballpark. You know, we cannot operate like Uber. You know, we don't do door-to-door service in a lot of areas, but we are committed to making sure kids get to and from school safely. And so annually, we have to approve those bus stops, and they're done and official at this point in time, as we're bringing it to you. We won't bring back any changes if a kid gets added or things throughout the year. We try to fit them into generally this system that we have. So this will be the last time you see this throughout the year, unless there's a monumental shift we have to make at some point in time where we change how we bus, so.
Roll call, please.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 9 is public records requests. Item 10 is personnel, so I need a motion to approve items A through P.
So moved.
Second.
I will read through these. A is a list of resignations. B is employment pending background checks. Skip ahead. C is probably also the same. Yeah, substitute employment background checks pending. D is change of status, and I think these are the people that may have finished classes or something over the summer. Is that correct? Change of status?
Yeah, so change of status, if they were new to us, you know, what we did was we verified their employment record elsewhere and moved them on steps. If it's somebody who completed a master's and they moved from a bachelor's to a master's in terms of a salary schedule, then that changes their status as well. So it could be new employees that we've finally been able to confirm their work history, or it could be current. A lot of these appear to be people that are moving on the salary schedule.
Yeah, or number of hours
Yeah.
per day, things like that, yes. E is a list of supplementals, again, pending background checks. F is the board resolution for employment of non-licensed coaches. G is a list of supplemental volunteer coaches. H is also volunteers, but in other areas. I is a list of stipends. J, cooperating teacher stipends. These are for our student teachers, correct?
Yeah, so these are our staff members that are
Supporting,
hosting. State law requires that they are no longer allowed to receive compensation directly from the university. And so it has to come to the district that we provided them in some sort of way, credit for their classroom, something like that along the way. So
We seem to have quite the relationship with Wright State, don't
we
we?
have a great relationship with Wright State in this way, yeah.
K is leave of absence and unpaid days. L is Saturday school monitors. Can we pencil in Roy McCutcheon on that list? You'd love to be doing that on a Saturday morning, wouldn't you?
I attended enough of those as a student.
M is district accompanist, I can never say that word, accompanist. There we go.
Both times
Close
were wrong.
enough. N is long-term substitute. O is a list of game workers, and P is one tutor. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And item number 11 is to enter into executive session, so I need a motion to consider the employment and compensation of a public employee or official.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And as we enter into this, just make the statement, we will not be taking any actions once we exit out of executive session other than to adjourn our meeting. So, thank you.